1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember the number 5 and remember 5%. 5% down only will get you into a condo in downtown by the water. This is going to be with beautiful waterfront condos and townhouses in Mississauga. You put 5% down, you get a 5% cashback. Parking, call any builder, or if you were to find out, is $30,000. It's only $10,000. I am the specialist. I help you to get a pre-construction condo reserved in your name. This is your retirement. Are you looking to invest? Are you looking to retire? Call me. I am your real estate wealth creation specialist. I will help you. It is difficult to save and create wealth based on regular incomes coming in, whether you're self-employed or on a salary. Don't you agree? I can help you to buy today a condo, new condo in the GTA is growing at the rate of 10% per year. 10% per year. So you buy today. This is 2019. Can you imagine 2021, 2022, before you take possession, what the value will be? And guess what? You could sell it. It's called an assignment. You can sell it before closing and make the profit. I'm the specialist. I know how. I can help you make money. Call me, Jay Banerjee, 647-273-1119. Pick up the phone and call me now, because this could change your future.
The Canadian Constitution recognizes 3 groups of Indigenous peoples: First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. These are 3 distinct peoples with unique histories, languages, cultural practices, and spiritual beliefs. More than 1 million people in Canada identify themselves as an Indigenous person, according to the 2006 census. Today we have in our studio an elder originally from the OG Cree First Nations Reserve of Michigan Lake, also known as Bearskin Lake First Nations. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Levi Samson Beardy. Thank you so much for being here.
It's an honor to be here.
All right, so according to you, I probably did not pronounce Michigan correctly. So what is the right pronunciation?
Michigan Lake.
Michigan Lake. All right.
Everybody else mispronounces it.
All right, so we want to correct our pronunciation. So it is not Michigan, it is Michigan.
That's correct.
All
yes.
right. So you represent the First Nations of Canada?
Yes, to some degree.
To some degree,
As much as I can, as often as I can.
All right.
Yes.
And so what would you like us to know about the contributions of the First Nations to this great nation?
Well, we're one of the original founding peoples of the place we now know as Canada. Mm-hmm. Before Canada was founded in 1876 or 1867, we were already here. And so we helped build it right from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And there was a royal commission that was done in 1986 by the Canadian government.
Okay.
That went into the history of the first contacts of Europeans with First Nations and, well, Indigenous peoples in Canada. So it went right back to the original explorers, the original, I guess, politicians and fur traders and so on. Mm-hmm. And they went right into the first person accounts of those times, the letters that were written, the correspondences and the descriptions of the First Nations people and the relations between them. And we come out very, very well in that. We, okay. As an honorable, noble people that are willing to help everybody that came over and to to Canada, and whether it was on the West Coast or the East Coast, we welcomed everybody. Originally in the East Coast, the Atlantic, as Europeans came, we welcomed them and helped them to survive in the new country, and the same thing in the West Coast. And so that's something I look with pride about, because we were hospitable people,
Okay.
the original hosts of this land.
All right. That's really good to know. So what are some of the things that you, as the First Nation people, would like for people like us who have come from other parts of the world to know about this great country?
Well, one of the things is to know that we're still here, and we're starting to see more of our people's concerns and desires being put on the news, on the table within Canada itself. And so what we'd like you to know is, first of all, that we were never a conquered people. We were people who made treaties with the British and the French, and the treaties were nation to nation. So we were people that had authority and power, and we signed treaties. But the problem was that the treaties were violated, not by us, but by the European powers that were. And so slowly we diminished in our authority. And we end up becoming, people who were on reserves. And the funny thing about reserves is, the term that I grew up with was that it was, instead of reserve, we used our language, which said Ushkunagan. So we lived on the Ushkunagan. Ushkunagan in my language means leftovers. So we had this great country of Canada at one time, and all of a sudden we've been moved around, and all of a sudden we're living on leftovers, a little corner where we were pushed and set into a reserve. So that's a sad part of it. That's one part of it. And that created in us a dependency on the government because of the treaties. The treaties were there that said they would give us so much money and until, as long as needed to help us survive within those reservations. And so we ended up depending on the government. And the government didn't help, because when Native people wanted to leave the reserve to find work, there were roadblocks towards that, not roadblocks as such, but obstacles. If a person went to try to go to university, they would have to be, disenfranchised. That means that they would lose their status as a First Nations person. They would no longer be First Nations and no longer be Inuit or Métis. They would lose that status completely. Or if they wanted to go to work somewhere, they weren't allowed to do it. The one example is in the 1800s, a young man from one of the reserves in Alberta got a job as a cobbler in the local community. So he would go to the local community, work, get paid, and then come back to his home reserve. And that was okay. But his brother came in and wanted to say, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to become a blacksmith in the local town. So they went. But then there are people that were in charge of the reserves that were non-native called Indian agents. They made sure that the government's interests were held, by rights. When he heard this, he told these two young men, you've got to stop working because otherwise you'll lose your native status. So they were given that choice. Either sign away your native status or else go back to the reserve. And so a lot of our people got lost because of that. They would have to go out into the world and become part of Canada, let's say, to become to survive in some ways, to get away from the reserve.
So there was a commission that was commissioned, I guess.
That's right, by the government.
By the government on truth and reconciliation.
That's right, yeah. That's,
so tell us a little bit about this commission.
Okay, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was there to figure out what was the reality of our relationship between First Nations people and Canada itself. And so they looked at it and they said, okay, what are the major problems that are dividing the two peoples? And so what they ended up doing was having 94 recommendations. Okay, and it goes to various areas of the Canadian population, to the educational front, to the clergy, to the politics areas, and so on. And some of the areas are just to start to be educated about First Nations issues, to go back to the 1986 Royal Commission that highlighted the historical accounts of our First Nations peoples, and to start to build a new relationship where there's an awareness that we're just not a people that are forgotten, that we're still here. We want to be a part of the Canadian identity. We are already, but we want to be recognized as part of it.
Okay. Obviously, the government is trying the best it knows how to. What do the people need to do to get involved in this process?
Well, some of them...
Because there's a lot of healing, from my point of view, that needs to happen between all these different people groups. And so government can only do so much, right? So what do we as the people of this great nation need to do to become part of this conversation?
Well, first of all, it's just to get to know First Nations people. As you and your family have started to get to know me, you're starting to understand where we're coming from. And that's the first step. Now, we have preconceptions. There's all kinds of preconceptions about different peoples from different backgrounds, and what we hear or what we choose to hear or what catches our attention. Sometimes the negative things catch our attention about people more so than the positive aspects. And I was in one place, and they were having a prayer time for Native people. When I came in to pray with them about Native people, they were scared of me. They were very scared of me, and I was wondering what's going on, you know. And they wouldn't warm up to me, and I was concerned. Said they're praying for my people, but they're not being friendly to me. They don't want to accept me, and so all of a sudden I realized all the prayers that they were making was for Native people who are under some kind of addiction, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or violence, or anger issues, or poverty, and it was all of these things. And they said even the ones that do good, Native people that do good for a while, end up messing up, and they go back to some kind of negative lifestyle, dysfunctional lifestyle. So all of a sudden it hit me that they're thinking that, yes, I'm here, I'm good for now, but I'm going to fall later on, and all of a sudden I'll be on the streets or something, or doing something violent. So they were scared of me, because that's all they knew. So that's when it came upon me to sort of introduce them to people, Native people, who have been very successful in life, whether it's politics, whether it's scholastics, or the medical profession, or just working at a place and living really highly functional lives, interesting lives, and powerful lives. And I remember going back to them and introducing them to these historical accounts, or these accounts of people in the present day. And it was like there was a big sigh of relief on their part. They said, okay, oh good, you're not all hopeless. So that was a relief for them, and all of a sudden they warmed up to me.
And this is one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on our show, because there are lots and lots of people who have come from many different countries who watch our show and who call Canada home. And I think it's really important for all of us to know the stories, the history, the contributions that the First Nations people have made to this great country. Now, in terms of making future contributions to this nation, because I believe that the First Nations people still have a very significant role to play in modern Canada. Right. What do you think is the role of your people in today's Canada?
Going back to us being the original hosts, okay, I believe there's something very important within that, because as hosts we welcomed everybody and helped them. And I think we have to take up that mantle that our ancestors had, which was that caring for the rest of the world as they came to our shores. And we have to do the same thing with every nationality that comes here. And I've always welcomed everybody. In fact, as a young boy, I remember saying, "This is a wonderful country. Why doesn't everybody come here?" And it's happening.
All right,
Almost
so we
every
are
nation,
here.
every
guess-
nation of the world is here.
Yes.
And they're here, I believe, to help mankind in its fullness. So our responsibility as hosts is to maybe be a part of that reconciliation of peoples, not just First Nations with Europeans and so on, but to help others, nations that may have had issues in their home country, and they come here, and to bring them together so that they don't have those issues anymore, so there can be reconciliation amongst themselves. So I look forward to that we can be a part of that. Many of our young people have a desire to help our country. They look at the ecological disaster that's going on at the moment, and they have a desire to be a part of saving the planet, let's say. And in fact, I have a daughter who's in the sciences, and she's been on CBC TV where she's done scientific research on the microplastics on the Bay of Fundy. And I'm proud of her because she's trying to do as best as she can with the giftings that she's been given to find a solution to all of the problems existing in our natural state.
All right.
And
So what I'm hearing you say is in terms of the role that the Native people still have to play in modern Canada is for the first step in that direction is for people like us who've come from other parts of the world to get to know
right, yes,
who the First Nations people are and where they are, or how they live, what is happening in their world as well. Because what I heard you say is that when people have misinformation or half information or half truth, that leads to fear.
that's right. That's
Right?
correct, yes.
So the first step in truth and reconciliation is to get to know the truth,
That's right.
the whole
That's correct.
truth.
That's right,
Right?
exactly.
And
Exactly.
yes, and that will eventually lead to reconciliation, because that reconciliation has to also take place with the rest of Canada.
That's right, yes.
Right?
And the important part we have to remember too is our people were very spiritual people. Everything that was in their lives was by the working of with the Creator and the spiritual realm that was there. So it wasn't the laws of nature that they were really hanging on to. It was a spiritual life. Everything that they did throughout the seasons was by the laws of nature, but also the laws of the spirit world. And so these are things that are very important, because many times I wonder, because I look at some of the things that were discovered by our people without scientific principles, how to find the medicine within the roots of plants and so on. They didn't do scientific studies for it. I believe many of them prayed to the Creator and said, we have a need here in this community, help us. And there was a vision given to them to take of this product that the Creator had made for their well-being, and they were able to do it. And so I'm excited about that. And a lot of, because when you look at the pharmaceutical companies now, they'll take some of the information that First Nations people had and make millions off of it, producing it into a pill formed. But it's good to see that it was already being done by First Nations people long before that, or Indigenous peoples.
All right, now you touched a little bit about the spiritual aspect. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that, because what has happened not just in Canada, but I guess byproduct of modern thinking is to just base everything on reason.
That's correct, yes.
Right? And just do away with all the spiritual aspect of it, and just do away with what kind of impact has this had on everyday life of everyday people?
Well, the sad part is that when Europeans came, they outlawed many of the spiritual practices of the indigenous peoples, and tried to replace it with what they believed was right, and sometimes that did more damage than good. If there would have been a little bit more sensitivity, I believe there could have been a more of a gracious intermingling of an understanding that we're talking about the same thing. Okay, and I believe that as God says in the Bible, He says, "I have talked to all people at all times." So everyone has been spoken to by the Creator at some time, and everybody's had a thought about things beyond the normal. Just the fact that, hey, what's up there? You know, I see stars, I see all kinds of things that I can't understand. And so the question comes to mind, you know, is there something beyond? And so, and scientists can only work with the laws of understanding. So they see you're a human being, you're made of flesh, bone, and tissue, hair, and so on. And they hear your voice. They see your reactions, but they don't, and they know you have a brain. They know we have brains, but there's more to it than that. And they can't figure out life, the life that comes from it. And I like the word you talked about, chai, with Molly, chai meaning in Jewish terms, life. Life. Yeah. So we all have life, but we're all different forms of life. You know, male, female, big, small, but there's life within us and from different nations, and we speak about our lives in different languages even. But that life cannot be measured in the scientific realm. Science cannot measure life, except that it starts and it stops. And some of that life might be a little bit dysfunctional along the way, but life itself, they can't pin it down to say we can reproduce life. They can get some kind of robotic things going, but I believe that our people really depended on the spiritual connection that they had with the Creator, and moved in accordance with that. Because I come from a community that only signed treaties in 1929. That's 90 years ago now. 90 years ago, and my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents couldn't speak English. So, and I never learned English until I was 6 years old, when we came south to one of the mining towns in northern Ontario. And so for me, I can remember being out in the middle of nowhere, it seems like, but to me it was like the center of the universe, because I was there. This is where I was growing up. But then to come down to another community where the languages were different, there were cars, there were electric lights, running water. This was all new stuff. It was like I was going from one world to another world. And in a sense, I was a new immigrant to this new nation of Canada, even though this was my country. So I ended up living with people that came from Europe, first generation people. They were just trying to figure out who they were as Canadians, just as I was trying to figure out as a Canadian what I was as a Canadian. So it's a strange thing. So many of our people are in that mindset, are in that set right now, where they feel that even though they're Canadians, they're not Canadians to
That
some
is
degree.
sad.
So they're not. That is sad. Some of
Because
them
they don't feel a part of.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't feel welcome. It's as though it's a barrier there, and it's almost like you have to fight to be a part of this wonderful nation. You know?
Okay, so I guess that's what I meant, that this truth and reconciliation that is meant to be between the First Nations and the European nations that were represented here must now continue with the rest of the people as well, so that sometime, somewhere along the line, everybody will feel included.
That's right. That's correct.
In this great
yes.
nation.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
So we all have a role to play.
That's correct.
In that, and so we'd like for you to come back. I know you have a very interesting story from being an atheist to someone who believes in God. So we would like for you to come back and share that story with us. And for now, it's really wonderful for you to be here with us so we can hear from someone who represents the First Nations, what they really think. And we, as an immigrant to this great nation, I am grateful for this great country, and I'm also grateful for the prayer that you prayed. Because remember, you said, I prayed that people from all over the world would come. And perhaps I'm here, and others like me are here as a result of your wonderful prayer. Well, thank you so much for being here and for welcoming us into this great nation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There's lots more for you. Don't go anywhere.
All I wanted was to see a movie. One down, please.
I can't sell downstairs tickets to you people.
How dare they? I could afford to buy the more expensive ticket. I run my own business. But they refused to take my money. They left me there all night. On what charge? They said I didn't pay the theater tax. But it was really about color.
Sister Desmond, appeal this conviction and your community will stand behind you.
Do you have any idea what this will do to us?
So what are you going to do? Make it right.
Viola Desmond's case inspired Nova Scotia's civil rights movement. She was pardoned 63 years later based on the injustice of her conviction.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember the number 5, and remember 5%. 5% down only will get you into a condo in downtown by the water. This is going to be beautiful waterfront condos and townhouses in Mississauga. You put 5% down, you get a 5% cashback. Parking for any builder, or if you were to find out, is $30,000. It's only $10,000. I am the specialist. I help you to get a pre-construction condo reserved in your name. This is your retirement. Are you looking to invest? Are you looking to retire? Call me. I am your real estate wealth creation specialist. I will help you. It is difficult to save and create wealth on regular incomes coming in, whether you're self-employed or on a salary. Don't you agree? I can help you to buy today a condo, new condo in the GTA is growing at the rate of 10% per year. 10% per year. So you buy today. This is 2019. Can you imagine 2021, 2022, before you take possession, what the value will be? And guess what? You could sell it. It's called an assignment. You can sell it before closing and make the profit. I'm the specialist. I know how. I can help you make money. Call me, Jay Banerjee, 647-273-1119. Pick up the phone and call me now, because this could change your future.